And we are back. Pop culture chats with Ryan and Matt and some birds that might be chirping outside my window. But it's a beautiful spring day, so why not welcome the elements for our NFL free agency special? We contemplated doing a preview, but we're doing more of a recap. But there are still some loose threads that we can kind of ruminate on and make predictions about. But Ryan,
Yes.
what have you thought of this free agency so far?
I mean, it's been okay. I don't think it's like there's been like a ton of hard hitting, signings. There's been some shuffling, especially at the quarterback position with Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. I know that Geno Smith was a trade, but it's been kind of a part of this offseason. So that was kind of interesting, seeing that. But outside of that, I mean, I think it's a lot of teams just trying to sign more like ancillary guys to try to you know, um, just set a foundation and kind of uh, just get ready for the season that way. So I don't know. It's been fine. I mean, but again, like nothing crazy. It's interesting to see. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably the biggest domino still available right now. At least one of them, at least one of the more interesting. So that's something we'll probably talk about. But that's someone who I'm probably most interested in at this point. But yeah, nothing like huge though. Nothing crazy. No like Luka Doncic type, move. But still a lot of activity though. I mean, the first day there was like an Adam Schefter tweet every 5 minutes. So it's still been active.
The thing with free agency is it's really become its own type of season in a way for the NFL, and it's really become a marketable product where people,
Hmm.
I feel like, are more interested in free agency than the NBA games going on right now. It has more of a spotlight in the culture.
That's fair. I mean, that part of that is just the NFL is way more popular. That's probably part of it.
No, for sure. But the other thing with free agency is, I mean, it started in the '90s, and I think ever since its formation, even from that first year where there was like Reggie White went to the Packers, and you had Scott Mitchell, who was Dan Marino's backup in Miami, played a few games, and then signed a big deal to be the starter with the Lions. And they both represent the two different tales that free agents can often go. It can either be this great addition that bolsters a team to another level, whether it's a bad team
Mhm.
being competitive or competitive team reaching the top of the mountain, or you spend way too much money on someone who doesn't work out. And to be honest, I think free agency, it, it's a little overrated. I hate to say it. I mean, a little, because I feel like we look at most of the great teams, it's built through the draft. It's built through
Yeah.
the analysis there, and you really can't build a team with free agents. Are there examples of teams that have done it well? Yes, and actually, I think the best example we can look at in recent ilk would be the Commanders last year.
Mm.
They were a team that kind of hyper jumped their or accelerated their rebuild by adding a lot of older veteran ancillary pieces. But how sustainable that is, we'll see.
Hmm.
But I like that about free agency is that it's the ultimate coin flip.
Hmm.
We can speculate now about the players and if they'll have impact, all that. But who knows? I mean, some of them will feel more confident than in others. But I think the quarterback is always a good place to start because it obviously is the most dynamic and beloved position in the sport.
Hmm.
We had a lot of movement there. I think the first big chess piece to really swing was Geno Smith getting traded to the Raiders
Hmm.
for a third round pick.
Hmm.
So let's kind of break this down. The rumor was Geno wanted 40 plus million on a contract extension.
Yep.
Seattle said no, thank you. They originally wanted to keep him, so they traded him for a third. What was your thoughts on this one, Ryan?
I like it honestly for both teams. I especially like it for the Raiders because, I think the Raiders are a very talented team. They just re-signed Max Crosby. I thought that, or extended Max Crosby. That was a big deal. But one of the things ever since Derek Carr left is they just haven't been able to figure out quarterback. They kind of been stuck with quarterback by committee who's available at the current moment. And they've dealt with injuries at the position, just underperforming play. Um, whether it's Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. So at least Geno Smith comes in. He's not like a top 10 quarterback, but he's someone who the past few years has kind of had a renaissance, and he also reunites with Pete Carroll, which I think is a big deal. He had one of his best years, if not the best year of his career, under Pete a couple years ago. So I think that's a good start for the Raiders overall. And like you said, like for the Seahawks, they viewed him as someone who wasn't worth the money that he that he wanted. And he was someone who struggled. He turned the ball over quite a bit last year. So the Seahawks just said, this is the end of the road for him. So I understand that side of it as well. So overall, I think it's a good trade for both sides.
The thing with him was the red zone turnovers. I think he might have had like 8 red zone picks, which is really costly. I mean, that's the area where you got to at least be getting 3 points on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I think the move's all right for the Raiders. Do they really? I feel like with Brady there, they do feel this pressure, and Pete Carroll being an older coach, to kind of accelerate the rebuild a little.
Yeah.
Considering the division they're in, it's tough to see that working great. I mean, got to deal with the Chargers. I'm a little dubious about the Broncos, but they still got Sean Payton, a good defense, and then obviously Pat Mahomes. So the actual results of this, I would put as like a TBD, because we could totally see a world where, okay, now the Raiders are going to win 6 games instead of 4 next year, and then yet again they're not able to get the top quarterback in the draft. So what is the intangible value of being competent other than making things more respectable for Tom Brady? So I do think in a way it's a decent like stopgap, but in a way I don't know if that's what the Raiders route should have been. But with the age of Pete Carroll as your coach,
yeah,
with Tom Brady coming in as a new owner and wants to really be competitive right away, and you sign Max Crosby, I kind of get those internal pressures force them to make this decision. Ultimately, I think Geno's like the 18th or 19th best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
He does have a really great arm. I just think there's a lot of inconsistencies. You can look at some games where he plays like a top, 8 quarterback in the league. But then we were talking about these red zone turnovers, some foibles in the fourth quarter of games.
Yeah.
So, for the Raiders, I don't think it's a loss. Do I think it's a huge win either? No, but it's a decent enough move considering a third-round pick's not a lot of equity, and they already have another third-round pick. So.
And also, this draft is not the greatest at quarterback. I've been hearing that next year's is going to be a lot better. So, at least in the interim, they're competitive, and they don't have to kind of like overdraft for a quarterback, at least at this moment. So, that's
yeah. Well, part of me would have just said, all right, let's go with Aiden O'Connell. And maybe sign like a Jameis Winston type.
Yeah, I mean that's true because they're still gonna have to give Geno like $40 million a year or whatever.
Well, the thing is too, it's harder to get a great quarterback in the door now.
Yeah.
If you're gonna win 6-7 games, you're not getting a top 5-7 pick, and that's what you need to get these quarterbacks. And once
that's true,
once the bad team gets the number 1 pick, they're not trading it at 9 out of 10 times. They're gonna want the quarterback.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
It puts the Raiders in this kind of purgatory, in a way. But hey, if they win 8 or 9 games, I don't think it's a bad purgatory to be in because it's just been so desolate there. But if it's more of like the 6-7 win range, and it's just you're not seeing as many young players on the roster pop off. I know they got Brock Bowers, but I could just see it not being the most fulfilling result in the world. But let's focus on the Seattle end of things, and obviously it's nice having the context now. Originally, a lot of people were saying, oh, why would Seattle trade Geno Smith without having a backup plan at quarterback? Guess what? They got Sam Darnold 3 years. I've seen reports of the contract around a $101 million. I've seen reports at $110 million.
Yeah.
The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. We know with a lot of the contracts, the negotiations, there's those incentives that makes things a little murky. But Sam Darnold, Seattle, new starting quarterback, obviously big success last year with Minnesota. What's your thoughts on this move, not only for Sammy D, but also for Seattle?
I mean, it's great for Sam Darnold, I mean, he's getting paid now after, his own kind of renaissance last year. But I don't know. Like, I think it's like almost a similar situation, honestly, with the Raiders, where it's like, I don't think this really raises their ceiling all that much, the Seahawks. Like, I don't I think like you don't have Kevin O'Connell anymore as your coach, and he's clearly a top tier coach in the league, especially offensively. So that doesn't help. You don't have the weapons that you kind of had in Minnesota. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba is good, but you lost Metcalf, so that kind of hurts. So it's just I don't know. Like I don't think he has as good of like an infrastructure to kind of thrive, at least compared to what he had in Minnesota. But at the same time, it does, keep the Seahawks competitive. Um, it's a division. I mean, again, it is kind of a tough division though. So I don't know. Like I don't think this like makes them front runners in the division at all. So it's kind of similar to the Geno trade for me. I'm just kind of like it feels like a shrug, honestly, on my end. But
I get what you're saying, but I think for Seattle, I think there's more positives to point to.
mm,
First, it gives you way more mobility as a team. You go from a 34-year-old quarterback in Geno to a 27-year-old at Sam Darnold. And for Sam Darnold, 27, he's kind of like a seasoned 27. He's been around.
yeah,
I mean, what team is this for him? His fourth,
yeah,
I believe. Yeah, he went from
it might be fifth, honestly.
maybe fifth. Yeah, because
Because
the
San
Niners,
Francisco, yeah,
Jets, Panthers, Niners, Vikings,
Jets
Seattle. So he's been around.
and Jets, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Seattle has a decent enough infrastructure. Obviously, offensive line's always been a problem,
hmm
which makes me a little worried with Sam Darnold because we've seen him get frazzled in those type of situations. But I do like Jackson Smith and Njigba. I do think Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker have promise as running backs, even though they haven't really lived up to that potential. But
hmm
I just think at the end of the day, this is a more high upside move for them because we did see that last year with Sam Darnold. He had 35 touchdowns and we played a B plus A minus type regular season up until that last week, and then obviously the wild card game as well.
hmm
So I think it does give you more of a ceiling. You get a quarterback who aligns more with the youth movement of the roster. And I honestly have to disagree with the notion where it's like Seattle is in a similar spot to the Raiders. I think they're definitely a way better caliber team. There's way more promise on the roster. I mean, they've basically been a 9-8 team the last 3 years. It's 500 plus team. The Raiders, if you told the Raiders 9 wins, they would throw a parade. Vegas would be up all night. They they've been in futility. So I think Seattle, there's actually growth potential there. I think the Rams have the division on lock this year, but they're getting older, obviously. The Niners are kind of washing out, and the Cardinals are just always this enigma where they're just always inconsistent. So Seattle, I think they're kind of setting themselves up, or maybe not this year is a playoff year. I think they have a really bright future. I mean, they got Tyreek Woolen on the corner. They got some good D linemen. I think there's some potential there. They just got to get another receiver and really iron out the consistencies with the line in the running game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I see what you're saying. Especially with the youth movement aspect of it. I just think like we kind of saw like what Darnold's ceiling is as like a starting quarterback. Like I mean, I feel like this is a team, the Vikings, that had some luck on their side, and it's like, okay, the Seahawks make the playoffs, that's great, but are they ever gonna really like knock at the door of like a championship game?
Yeah, yeah, your mic's plugging out there. But no, I think the thing is, it's obviously Sam Darnold an MVP quarterback? Is he a championship quarterback? No, but how is Seattle getting that quarterback in the door? They're not a bad enough team where they're drafting high. There isn't those type of quarterbacks available for trade. So you kind of just have to maximize what you can get. And I think the other thing too, with Seattle, with Mike McDonald, a more defensive coach, I think they are going to want to play a more conservative, kind of run-oriented offense, and make things kind of simple for Sam Darnold. So it definitely won't be as dynamic of an offensive scheme as what he had with Kevin O'Connell. But I don't think they'll be making him throw 4,000 plus yards. So I don't think you're asking a lot for him.
Mm.
And then the other thing too is I just think the price, 30-35 million range, that's not bad for a quarterback. I mean, anyone usually gets around 40, so it's not a bad risk. Say if he has a mid-year this year and next year he totally washes out,
Mhm.
all right, then you're at the top of the draft and you can make your next step. But I don't think it's a bad investment. It's a decent risk in my book.
Yeah, that's true. The short term, is a short term contract,
Yeah,
so
3
it's
years.
not like they're really dedicated to him for a long period of time. So if things really go awry over the next couple of years, it's like, all right, bye. We'll just draft a quarterback at that point. But so yeah, I could see that for sure. I'll just be curious to see how far the Seahawks can go with Darnold in this, and hopefully the Seahawks do kind of play more conservative, especially in the red zone after, as you mentioned, Geno having as many picks as he did in that area of the field last year.
Well, the thing with the Vikings too, and I think Sam Darnold gets a little bad rap.
Mhm.
Obviously, he didn't play well. The Lions game, he was awful. But the Rams game, they just got completely outclassed on all levels. So I'm not gonna kill Sam Darnold. Oh, you blew it for them. Like the defense sucked. They couldn't run the ball. Justin Jefferson wasn't making plays. Like everything went wrong. So I'm not gonna write Sam Darnold off. He's proven himself as someone we shouldn't really write off. I mean, you could have looked at his Jets tenure and said this guy has no chance. Had an up and down tenure with the Panthers, but his second year, I do recall he actually had some good stretches and took care of the ball. Backed up the Niners, worked with Kyle Shanahan for a year, and then it paid off. So,
Mhm.
let's do kind of grades for these two moves since they're so tangentially connected. I'm gonna give the Seahawks against Sam Darnold a B plus.
Wow. For me, I'm gonna give it a B minus. It's not bad, but I don't think it's gonna like solve all their problems.
That's
But I
fair.
understand the arguments.
But see, the thing for me is I view it more in the context of what is your potential other moves. What
Yeah,
else could Seattle have done?
I agree.
Got Daniel Jones,
Mhm.
got Aaron Rodgers, got Justin.
Oh, I agree.
They
I'm
could
glad
have
it's a
done some other
3-year deal.
things,
Yeah.
but you can't say, oh well, why don't you have Josh Allen? You know what I mean? It's you got to be realistic with what these teams, the parameters they're kind of working within. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. And as we mentioned before, the quarterback draft class not great. So
Yeah, and that puts
I
even
can
more
see it.
pressure on it.
Yeah.
Well, I give the Seattle credit too for, like I said, there was some doubt after the Geno trade. Oh, are they gonna actually get a quarterback? They figured it out right away.
I my yeah.
What were you
I
gonna
I,
say?
I just it's just the thing with Darnold is like it was last year an anomaly. Like I know you mentioned he had some good stretches in Carolina. But like was this O'Connell's work? You know what I mean? Like I just find it hard to believe that he was pretty spectacular at moments last year, Darnold. I just find it hard to believe that he's going to be like that again
I don't think he's gonna be
without
as
O'Connell.
good. Don't get
And
me
he's got the
wrong. I'm
best
not saying he's
receiver,
throwing 30 touchdowns. I'm not. Don't
Yeah.
put me on that. I
No,
would
no,
guess
no.
like 25 touchdowns. But again, if they're not asking as much from him, you don't need him to
Yeah.
be Superman. I think that's what Mike McDonald's vision for this team is, to build through the defense, build through the running game, and have Sam Darnold be that, Brad Johnson on the Buccaneers or Trent Dilfer on the Ravens type kind of game manager. So
Yeah.
that's an appropriate role for him. You can dismiss the Panthers, but look at that game log, bro. That team played with heart. They almost stole the playoffs from the Bucks in 22. And
Yeah.
Sam Darnold really took care of the ball. That's something that has me encouraged. So we'll move on to our
That's fair.
next quarterback free agents. We got
Mhm.
one of the bigger moves, Justin Fields to the New
Mm.
York Jets. 2-year, $40 million contract. Obviously, the Jets moving on from Aaron Rodgers and bringing in Fields as their replacement. Fields drafted with Chicago in 21. Once they got the number one pick, they kind of moved on. Started the season with the Steelers, but by week 6, he was benched even though the team was having success. So what do you think about Fields flying in with the New York Jets?
I honestly like this deal. I'm a fan of the Fields deal. To me, Justin Fields is like one of those quarterbacks who, I get it. Like it's not the style of offense the Steelers wanted to play in last year, but I feel like he has kind of gotten the short end of the stick throughout his career. I think there was a lot of instability in Chicago, and through that, he had some really inspiring moments. His accuracy was kind of off, but he played with a lot of heart and grit, and I think I think that's gonna translate well in New York. People. I think before Russ came back last year, he was 4-2 as a starter. again, that was obviously a better, he's in a better culture, but I think I like the Jets coach. I like Aaron Glenn. I like, how he's trying to become this kind of all-encompassing coach, and I know he's a defensive mind, but he's trying to focus on offense as well. So I think for the first time in a little bit, the Jets, have something here. Again, it's not gonna I don't think it's gonna raise their ceiling all the way to like a Super Bowl, but I think they're gonna be a lot more competitive, and it's only a 2-year deal. And the Jets can look at a more maybe longer term solution if this doesn't work out well, next season or the year after. So I'm in on the Justin Fields deal. I kind of like it.
Yeah, for me, I agree. I'm a fan. I think Aaron Glenn, a defensive-oriented coach, first year. I think Fields is a good fit for what he wants to do and how he wants to play. Similar to Mike Macdonald, defensive coaches like to be more patient, run-oriented. And I think Fields complements that well because he can really elevate your running game by being a running threat in his own right. I mean, we saw Khalil Herbert, who's kind of, a minimum player now, have 1,000+ yard seasons with Fields, and an offensive line that really wasn't that great. Another thing I like about Fields, as we're talking about offensive lines, the Jets' offensive line is dog doo doo. So to have a mobile quarterback, I think is really good. We saw Aaron Rodgers, I think, struggle in some games where it's just he was overwhelmed. The rush kept getting to him, and he's just not mobile anymore. So I think getting more mobile, but also getting younger. I mean, Fields, I believe, is 25. It's really interesting to see kind of the perspectives on him around the league. I think more people are out on him than in on him. I've always been a fan, and that's as a Packers fan. He's one of the rare NFC North players I like. All right, I respect him because I think he's really had to elevate his whole career. I mean, he started with Matt Nagy, a coach who didn't believe in him, and then he has this defensive coach in Eberflus who, let's just be honest, just didn't have a clue during his tenure. So I think he shined a bit with the Steelers. They had a functional offense. I get they wanted to do a more pro style offense with Russ, but did it really work out for them? I mean, it would have been interesting to think about what door number 2 would have been if they just kept running with Fields. But I like that the Jets get a little younger. And again, 2 years, $40 million. If it doesn't work out, you're not sweating it. So we can do grades on this move. What do you give the Jets?
I give it a B plus. I think Fields. I think I saw a much more like refined version of him last year. I think he only threw like one pick before he got benched, and he wasn't really getting sacked as much. So I think I like what the Jets did. I think it was like Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to come back again. The quarterback class is not good. So you get him on a short term deal and see what happens. I like it for the Jets.
Well, the best part, yeah, it alleviates that pressure, not only internally but externally. The New York
Yeah,
media bubble of like, what are we doing? Because if I like Tyrod Taylor, but
agreed.
if they were
Yeah.
starting him week 1, the papers and the fans would have probably been pissed.
hmm
So I like the move overall. We'll go on to the Indianapolis Colts, another quarterback shakeup, another Vikings backup departing. Daniel Jones signs with the Colts, 1 year, $14 million. GM Chris Ballard was very apparent about the team targeting a competitive quarterback option to kind of go toe to toe with Anthony Richardson. Daniel Jones, another guy like Justin Fields. I think the jury's more out than in on him.
Yeah.
But what did you think about this move?
I just think it's whatever. I mean, I think Daniel Jones. It's only 1 year, so I can't like sit here and be like, "Oh, this is horrendous! Like, what a stupid move from the Colts." And it's not like Anthony Richardson has like really proven himself yet. And I'm not saying I'm out on Anthony Richardson. He's just, there's some refinement still, and that's fine. He still showed flashes last year of being a good quarterback. So I understand it from that perspective. I mean, the thing I'll mention is I know one of the better attributes with Daniel Jones is he's a good runner. He's mobile, but he does have a torn ACL, so I don't know how that's going to affect everything. Um, And he just hasn't played much recently, so we'll see. I mean, I can't, like, again, I can't sit here and be like this is horrible, but I'm also just kind of like unmoved by it.
I mean, the torn ACL was like 2 years ago at this point. I don't know if that's a fair
I get it, but you get up.
encumbrance to put upon him. Where I don't think his running ability is why things didn't work out with the Giants last year. I'll just say that much.
Well, his
But
passing wasn't good.
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Jones. He's never been the most dynamic passer in the world. He's only thrown more than 15 touchdowns once in the season, and it was his rookie season. Uh, he takes care of the ball okay with the interceptions, but he does fumble a lot. I gotta be honest. I really like this move for the Colts, just because the ceiling of it I think is very positive, and the floor of it, if it doesn't work out, who really cares? Like you said,
Yeah.
Daniel Jones' mobility I think fits really well with the Colts, and I think I mean they lost a couple linemen in free agency, but they do have a more stable line situation than the Giants, and you have Jonathan Taylor, and they do have some decent receivers with Pittman and Pierce and Downs. So I do think there's a more cohesive structure for him to step into. It's not going to be like the Giants where things are just falling apart all the time. And we saw in 22, if you give him a coherent, competent team, he can hold his own. Again, he's not going to be a hero. He's going to be the 20th best quarterback or whatever, the 18th best quarterback. But for some teams, that's good enough. And I think for the Colts, he's a good competitive foil to Anthony Richardson. He's going to come in the building and bring a professionalism as a 7-year pro, kind of show him the ropes of how you tackle a day, as a quarterback. And I just think, like I said, if he plays and he stinks, all right, it's a 1-year deal and you move on. I really like this risk for them where I mean, for Daniel Jones, it's an interesting risk. It's like almost, would he have been better off staying with Minnesota? I think that's an interesting thought experiment.
Probably, I would say so. I don't know though. Like Steichen's a great offensive coach too, though.
The thing,
So
yeah, the thing with the Colts is he definitely got way more money. Like the Vikings would have
yeah,
paid him like 5 or 6 million to be the backup,
yeah,
but he gets double that with the Colts, and he gets a chance to start. But here's the thing: if he stinks, and then Chris Ballard and Steichen get fired, and he's just a free agent again, what's the future of his career? Where if he stayed in Minnesota, maybe JJ McCarthy, maybe he comes out flat, maybe he gets hurt. He would have been in a nice situation. So it's an interesting risk. It's the road traveled, the road not traveled a little bit there. But again, I like this risk. We can go grades with the Colts real quick. I'll give it a B.
no. I'm slightly lower. I'm gonna give it a C plus. The one other thing I'll say is it is kind of like a nebulous situation for the Colts. I get you want like the competition, you want kind of ignite a fire in a Richardson, but that also could be a hindrance to the team. You have that as a distraction, like who's going to be their quarterback. Kind of saw it with the Raiders in the past. So
I don't agree in this situation because there was a lot of the reports and things about Richardson is he didn't have the preparation, he didn't have the mindset that a starter should have in the work ethic. So I think having someone
that's
who's
fair.
like a pro to kind of educate that, and I think that's a good thing for the team morale because if you have a guy who's not there and doing what a quarterback should do, that's bad for morale. Like the team sees that, and I think that kind of is part of what led to his benching last year and affected his morale with the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think just having a stable enough option, someone a little better than Joe Flacco, hey, it's kind of do or die for Steichen and Ballard. So this is a decent enough, lottery ticket to pull out, I think.
Mm.
But we can go a little lightning round here, and we'll hit up some different teams, some winners.
Why don't we hit up our teams? Let's talk about Pats Packers.
I was just planning that. If you let me complete the sentence.
Oh, sorry.
This guy.
I was
Yes.
like,
Okay. The New England Patriots. Go ahead, Ryan.
what do you?
I'm just saying, reflect on your team.
All right, fine.
So eager to.
my apologies. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it was a good offseason. Not great, not terrible. I don't think I'm as like. I think initially when Milton Williams was signed, I was kind of like, oh, that's pretty fire. But I also think like thinking about it and just kind of doing more research. I hope it wasn't an overpay because he was like a rotational player with the Eagles, and that's just a result of the Eagles being so deep on that end. He had a great Super Bowl. I know he famously had the strip sack on Pat Mahomes. Um, so I don't know. Like I think it's good for the Pats, that signing. He's young too. He's only 26, but he doesn't seem like someone that's blown anyone away yet. So hopefully, I mean, it's a 4-year deal, $104 million. Hopefully it pans out. So that one I'm kind of like, like it, I'm kind of a wait and see situation with that. Um, who was the other one? Carlton Davis. I really like that. I really like that. Just to have someone to help in the secondary with Christian Gonzalez there. I thought that was a really good signing. Um, that was 3 years, 60 million. The other, I guess the only thing I'll mention about the Pats, I kind of wish they did more on the offensive line. I mean, Drake May took a lot of hits last year. I think he was concussed a couple times. That's just something you don't want to see with your rookie quarterback. Maybe that's something they'll address in the draft, but I think they only signed the Jets lineman. I forgot his name. I think it was Morgan Moses. Yeah, Morgan Moses. But he's 34 years old. So that's kind of been their only notable offensive line signing. So I think it's been an okay off season. I'd probably give it like a B minus right now.
Yeah, I'll actually go a little higher. I'll go B. I do like Landry a lot. His
Oh yes,
familiarity with
Landry too.
Vrabel's with
Yep.
schemes in Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
is very good. He had a strong season last year, 8 sacks. Carlton Davis, a good pro. Robert Spillane, I think one of the few standouts on those Raiders defenses.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think those moves I liked. I didn't really like the Milton move either. I think that's going to age poorly. But I think the one criticism of the Pats is I think line and receiver are
Yes.
pressing needs, and they still are undressed. Maybe they get Cooper Kupp, maybe not. I mean, I think they should draft a lineman in the draft. I think that's a no-brainer. But I'll actually give it a B because I do think this accelerates the growth of their defense, and if they're going to play through that, I think it's shaping into a pretty strong unit.
Wow,
So
thanks for giving a higher grade. Now Pats fans are gonna think I'm a hater.
yeah, I guess so. We'll go to my Packers. We got a couple big pieces. Aaron Banks was rated as one of the top linemen in the free agency class. 4 years, 77 million. And then Nate Hobbs with the Raiders. He was kind of a nickel cornerback for them. 4 years, 48 million. The big kind of hanging thread, or I guess there's two. One is Jair Alexander going to stick around? If so, will it be, or if not, will it be a release or a trade? And then the other hanging thread is what are we going to do at receiver? Obviously, Christian Watson's out for the season. And, I just think last year Dobbs and Reed both played well, but there is clearly a need for a go-to option. So I don't think these moves are bad. I especially think solidifying the line with Jacobs being such a strength for the team is really huge. And I think protecting Jordan Love obviously is really huge. I think Banks only allowed like 2 or 3 sacks the last like 3 seasons or something. And then Hobbs, I'll like him more if we're keeping Jair because, again, he's a slot corner. So if we have Jair and Carrington Valentine and then with those safeties and Evan Williams and Bullard, I think that's a strong force. But if we're just going to cut Jair and this is like the replacement, I'm way less happy with that. Like, I think Jair's value is pretty low at this point. If we can't get a decent trade package back, I say just ride with him and either hope he has a great season and his value goes up or maybe keep him around. So I give the Packers I'll go B, honestly. It's not exciting, but I think Aaron Banks was an excellent move. And I just think receiver, there's still Cooper Kupp. I mean, maybe there's someone we can trade for still. I don't think we're totally out of options yet. I do think receiver is one of the deeper positions in the league where having that elite guard is very rare. So I'll go a B for them.
Yeah, I'd probably go like B minus. I'll go B minus. I still, if I'm a Packer fan, I would want him to get a receiver still, but I don't know. I feel like there hasn't been as many like available receivers as we thought there was going to be. Like I think people thought T. Higgins would be available, and it doesn't seem like he is. So I don't know, but we'll see what happens.
I think there's a chance Brandon Ayuk becomes available.
I could see that. I mean,
I'm trying to kind of go around the league. kind of hitting teams in my head real quick. I think Garrett Wilson sticks around now. Yeah, I get there isn't like an elite option, but I think you can get like maybe a decent like number 2. I mean, Cooper Cup,
Yeah.
it wouldn't like thrill me, but I would be like, all right, that's decent. Because if we just have 4 number 2s, then I guess you don't need a number 1. Maybe, hey, maybe that'll be my boy Tucker Kraft. You know, maybe he'll be
Yeah.
Gronk.
Well,
So
we forgot about Devontae Adams. I guess that was the.
we didn't forget about him. We're going around the teams now, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. So we can hit that real quick. The Rams obviously not only signing Devontae but keeping Matthew Stafford. Great offseason for them. I think they're probably one of the biggest winners.
I'd agree. Yeah, I mean, I love keeping Stafford. I love getting Adams instead of Cup. I mean, I know Adams is kind of getting up there in age, but he's still elite, so I'm in.
Yeah, so we can any other winners kind of stand out to you, and then we can hit some losers real quick.
I kind of like I guess I kind of like the Bears. I feel like they focused on line this offseason, which was a huge need. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Caleb Williams was number 1 in sacks. I think he got sacked the most out of every quarterback in the league this year. So I kind of like what the Bears did. I low key kind of like what the Panthers did. They made a lot of defensive moves. They kept their guy J.C. Horn too. And the defense was a huge issue with them last year. But something was bubbling in Carolina last year, with Bryce Young playing a lot better. So I like how they kind of addressed their Achilles heel as well. So those are 2 that kind of come to mind for me.
Yeah, like I said, I think the Rams are definitely the biggest winner, but I'll add the Bears had a decent offseason, like you said, O-line. And I think, you got to kind of add getting the best coach on the market. I get it's not free agency, but that's part of the offseason. So that was a huge win for them. I also love what the Vikings did. Really got some key line pieces. You get Jonathan Allen on a good contract from the Commanders. You get Will Freeze and Ryan Kelly, 2 starters from the Colts last year to kind of solidify your line. And then you get Isaiah Rodgers, 2 years, $15 million from the Eagles. You kind of addressed a good variety of areas in a very impactful way. So I think maybe that would be my pick for the second best free agency. I'm kind of quickly glancing to see if there's any other ones I liked. I mean, I wish Seattle got more for DK Metcalf. If they got a first round pick, I think I would have put them there. But the fact they only got a second was kind of interesting. I think honestly we should hit. Do you have any losers that kind of come to mind for you? I'm kind of looking over. I know
the
I have a
Saints?
few personally. The
The
Saints,
man?
okay.
Yeah. I
Why?
don't know. I feel like they didn't. I know they re-signed Chase Young, right? But they're kind of going to be the same team, I feel like.
I was going to say a big one for me is the Chargers. I just think Najee Harris is not really an upgrade. And that's a team, again, desperate for a receiver. And I just expected them to last year was kind of the first year in the rebuild to take a more kind of substantial step forward. I know they brought back Khalil Mack, but he's kind of getting up there in age.
I have a weird one.
What's up?
I have a weird loser.
Okay.
Commanders.
I was going to say them too. I didn't love any of their moves. I thought Kinlaw, he's kind of getting passed around a lot. And I think Debo, another guy, he's had a lot of tread on his tires, playing running back, receiver, hybrid. And I just don't get his fit really with the Commanders. I think this is where I think they're going to be an interesting test case of their team that really succeeded from free agency. How sustainable is that going to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, your key drafted guys are what? McLaurin, obviously Jaden. I'm not thrilled with Brian Robinson. I think Brandon Sheriff, obviously, you've had from a while. But I don't know. I'm kind of interested to watch the Commanders a little this year. So not to pour cold water on their successes.
Yeah.
I'd also say the Niners were a loser. Again, a middling year last year, and they just kind of had to really cut a lot of players. They cut Leonard Floyd, cut Kinlaw. I mean, it just seems like they're in a really murky position.
Yeah, they just signed Mac.
It's so
Uh,
funny because people originally said that's who they were going to pick with the third pick in the 21 draft.
what sucks with them too is like the Brock Purdy extension because he's going to get a lot of money, and that's probably what's kind of
Well, who
strapped them
knows?
to.
They haven't paid him yet, so maybe that part there.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like they that's probably why they haven't been that active, and they've had to cut all these guys. They're probably revving up for that
Maybe
extension.
not. Maybe not. Maybe Mac is the foil a little bit.
Oh no!
I'm just saying. Brock Purdy hasn't been good enough where it's
I
like,
know.
oh, he's definitely getting the contract. Like I don't. I wouldn't
I
say
know.
that.
I
But
agree.
let's wrap up with just hitting on some of the kind of loose threads in free agency. Cooper Cup getting released. Where do you think he goes?
Bring him to New England.
Oh my god, of
This
course.
feels like a move the Pats would make. It really does. You know, or like I don't know. The Ravens like doing that too, like getting guys that are kind of like past their prime a little bit. I could see either of those teams.
Yeah, I I just think for me the Pats is like you actually have good like slot receivers. You have Kendrick Bourne. Like I
Yeah,
just
that's
don't
fair.
get what Cooper Cup really adds because I would rather more of like a burner, like a deep threat kind of guy. I think Booty too is like a pretty good like
Hmm.
intermediate slot receiver. So I would just rather get a burner. You know what I mean? And
That's fair.
maybe you do that in the draft, second round or something. But okay, I think that's a fair pick. I mean, honestly, like I said, I love my Packers guy. I'm kind of the more I
Just
think
pick their
about, the
own
more I
team.
like it. Just because it'd be good to have like a veteran,
Yeah, they
uh,
really need that.
a veteran in the room, someone who can be kind of reliable on third down. You can just kind of hit in the big situations. But we got to go to Mr. Aaron Rodgers, the
Mm.
enigma.
Oh, this is interesting here. This is
so,
interesting.
so yeah, this is a good one to wrap up on because it's kind of spicy. The kind of behind the scenes drama. So Monday, Tuesday, it really looked like okay, done deal going to the Steelers. People were saying, oh, the deal could get done today, this and that. And then kind of yesterday afternoon around 4 o'clock, the rumors were surfacing that the Vikings are interested in Aaron
Mm.
Rodgers. So now we're kind of at a standoff. Steelers, Vikings, the Giants are kind of out in the periphery there.
Yep.
So what do you think? What do you think? Oh, Aaron Rodgers should do.
I think it's gonna be the Steelers. If I'm being, I don't want to, I have my opinions on the Vikings too, but I'm gonna go Steelers because I think, Justin Fields is gone. I know they just signed Mason Rudolph. I don't envision him as the starter. And then Russell Wilson was reported yesterday that he's meeting with other teams. I think he's like meeting with Cleveland. So it looks like that, era is over. So it just seems the most logical. Like he's gonna end up going to the Steelers. It's a team that's in win now mode. It's a team that just got DK. You have the top 3 coach in the league. Like it's the most logical decision for both sides at this point. But Vikings, I wouldn't be surprised either, honestly.
Part of me wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers are just saying we're out. Like if he's playing games. I will say
That is true, yeah.
they did sign Mason Rudolph today, 2 years,
Yeah, I saw
eight
it. Yeah.
million. He did start for them in a playoff game. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
he's
not.
familiar.
It's
Yeah.
it's a decent. It's a funny kind of chess move where it's like, all right, there's negotiations still going on. They kind of bring in this backup plan option in the interim. But I do think he should go to the Steelers. Number one, you really don't have anyone to worry about behind you. I mean, Mason Rudolph's an okay veteran, but it's not like he's someone the fans are going to be crying for to play. So you have more stability there. Where the Vikings, JJ McCarthy, young quarterback, the team's kind of going to be itching to get him in. Number two, Rodgers and Tomlin, long-standing respect for each other, and he's a more kind of defensive coach, so he can kind of collaborate with Aaron Rodgers in a different way. Where Kevin O'Connell, offensive coach, he's going to have what he wants to do. Aaron Rodgers has what he wants to do. I think it's more of a clash.
Mm.
And then number three, let's think of a good number three. I just think,
The Giants, right? Oh,
well,
you're
no,
talking
not
about
the
team.
Giants. I'm saying reasons why I just think the
Oh,
Vikings aren't a great option. I think actually number three, for me, it's obvious. It's JJ McCarthy. I just don't get why you do this to someone who you draft 9th, 10th overall. You
I'll tell
trade
you
up to
why.
get him. Why would you bring in Aaron Rodgers? It's just a weird move. Like the Sam Darnold thing, he got hurt. It just worked out. He played well. I get it. But let's be honest, JJ McCarthy was one of the more pro-ready guys coming out of the draft. He won a national championship with Michigan. I'm fine with rolling the ball out with him. Obviously, you want to have a decent backup. But why invite this Aaron Rodgers stuff? How did it work for the Jets? It's like, let's not act like it was a success for the Jets. Everything failed miserably. So why would the Vikings, a team where it's like, all right, we got talent.
Because
Okay.
the
Because,
Vikings
yeah.
the Vikings have had 2 losses in the playoffs where they were favorites. And I can envision a scenario where the Vikings, some of the veteran brass, like Justin Jefferson, for example, might lose patience. If JJ McCarthy comes in and he's a little rusty, which would be under.
I got news for you.
What?
Aaron Rodgers' last 2 playoff losses were his favorites.
I get it, man.
Oh,
Okay, all right, but Matt, it does. I'm just saying, like it.
That's
I'm just
a good
saying,
one.
if
That's a
JJ
good
McCarthy, okay, if JJ McCarthy's a little rusty, which is understandable, like that he would be, I can see why not have someone at least to just start while JJ kind of eases back into things. I don't think that's the worst thing. It's not like Aaron's going to be there for more than a year, most likely.
I disagree. See, I disagree with that point completely. If the Vikings have some great year, I definitely think Aaron Rodgers wants to come back.
Okay, well then if they have a great year, then it's a great year. Like they make the
and then
NFC
you
Championship
alienate
or something.
I think JJ McCarthy. It'd
Listen.
be one thing to sit for 1 year, but if they're asking him to sit another year, I think he'd ask for a trade.
You have the Aaron Jones
and you'd be
connection.
completely justified to do so because he's a top 10 pick, and you're just letting him toil on the bench. It's not like Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. They were late first-round picks.
A second-year quarterback is not going to ask for a trade.
Yes, he will. Way. There's rumors he would this offseason if they sign. He's in a position to.
Bro.
Look how many teams want.
He hasn't played a game.
Look how many teams need a quarterback, Ryan. Look how many teams. You're telling me the Giants wouldn't be interested in JJ McCarthy? You're telling me the Titans wouldn't want to make a call for JJ McCarthy?
But would the Vikings do that? Like, why would they do that? Though?
Why? If he's holding out, you're in no position to. He can make it ugly. If they bring in Aaron Rodgers, he's not starting. So why does it matter for him to hold out? He'd just say, screw this. And if you're not going to want to have that drama all season, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, I just think it's a terrible thing to do to your quarterback. It would be a mess. Bring in some solid veteran. You know, I wouldn't even hate Russ. We'll finish with Russ. I wouldn't hate him, because he's going to be Mr. Good Guy, even if he's the backup.
No, it's the same thing, bro.
It isn't.
Remember the Broncos shit, bro? Like, I needed my own office and all this. Like that.
Yeah, but that was with the Nate Hackett. He's going to be in the Kevin O'Connell infrastructure. I'm just saying he's less of a personality like that. Like Aaron Rodgers, when he's not happy, he's like a cloud. It's like this dark malaise. But Russ he's always kind of has that like artificial cheeriness. Like, all right, let's go, guys. Like I don't think he'd be I'd like him more for Vikings than Aaron Rodgers. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. Because then, like your theory, if JJ's hurt or things don't work, okay, you got Russell, Hustle, Bustle, and Wilson. So it's not terrible.
That's fair. I mean, either way, a veteran quarterback wouldn't be the worst thing for the Vikings.
Definitely someone, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers is a guy. The other thing with Aaron Rodgers, you got to pay him. And I think that's where the Vikings-Steelers thing's funny, where it's like I think his contract value is kind of going up, where maybe he's going to make like $40 million or something crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think him going to Steelers just makes sense. Obviously, you got DK Metcalf in there. That's a huge addition. You actually have some weapons for once. I actually like getting rid of Najee Harris. I think Jaylen Warren has kind of been like the low key, like, I think this guy can kind of pop off and have like a, one of those backup running backs who finally gets the spotlight and, performs. So I agree with you. I hope he goes to the Steelers, but we shall see. We'll wrap up with Russell Hustle in Bustle Wilson. I ultimately think he goes to the Giants. That'd be my prediction.
Yeah, that's fair. I was going to say Giants too.
Ryan's, I don't give a crap.
No, I mean, that's what I was thinking too, because that's the only other team that really needs someone.
Well, we will see where these untangled threads land. But until then, thank you all for watching our NFL free agency special. It was great to go through some of these seminal moves. And, of course, we'll still have a lot of football to talk as we head towards the NFL draft. So, until next time, we'll have a movie-tastic show next time. Watch out for that. But until then, adios.
Peace.